List Professor Rose Luckin. She is Professor of Learner-Centered Design at UCL Knowledge Lab, Director of EdUCATE. It's very good that you are joining us this morning. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Willis. I am going to start very much on the basis of what's said. I think collaboration working together is key, so that we need to be better at.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing this very well. Should we just check? Have we got proper sound quality?
Yeah, no, apologies. I'm having the same issue. Do you just try again, Rose?
Let me try without my headset on and see if I speak better.
I'm afraid that is rather broken up. I tell you what I'm going to suggest.
Is that any better?
Oh, that's a lot better. That's fantastic.
Okay. Let's try that.
Good.
Okay. Right.
Thanks.
Start again. Thank you very much, Lord Willits. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm very much going to start with evidence, as you might expect. We conducted a study between March 2020 and October 2020 that's very complementary to the report that Caroline was mentioned. And I did give evidence at a session of that APPG. And we really wanted to look at the whole ecosystem, because often we focus on one part of the ecosystem rather than looking across the whole ecosystem. So we used a whole load of different methodologies, from harvesting Twitter data to surveys to interviews to looking at what was happening with the other pieces of research that were going on, and tried to look at the whole ecosystem and see where the EdTech piece in that puzzle could best be used and leveraged. And so there's no question, and our evidence absolutely backs up what Ty and Caroline have said, and that is that teachers were amazing and they adapted remarkably quickly and supported each other. For example, one quote from a teacher was, as soon as someone learned how to do something, we would then share it with everybody else. So I mean, we had some very basic training and then we shared. So it was just learning together, helping each other. And that's the big thing. As Caroline was saying, it's about connecting and communicating. But what we did find in our evidence, there was a lot of evidence of ineffective connections and communications between groups within that ecosystem of schools, parents, colleges, universities, learners, trustees, governors, policymakers, government. There was lots of ineffective connections and communications between these groups, and that compromised the integrity and the resilience of the whole system and disabled it from being the sort of self-supporting ecosystem that we need for the future. When I look at the scenarios that the OECD have presented just for the future of schooling, schooling extended, education outsourced, schools as learning hubs, learn as you go, very interesting scenarios, but in all of them, we need an ecosystem that's self-supporting and resilient. And so we found in our research that parents who felt they were very well connected to the school and received communication from school leadership were 10 times more likely to feel confident about the way their school was handling the disruption. And communication between EdTech companies and schools improved massively, which was brilliant. Over 60% of companies reported offering no-cost technologies, and they also made changes to their products and services to try and add functionality, for example, to support home learning. And educators, leaders and parents were all engaged in trying new technologies. 74% of educational leaders, 81% of teachers and 68% of parents reported using or recommending new technologies that they'd never used before, which is exactly, as Ty and Caroline were saying, a real game changer. But when it came to feeling connected and supported, more than 30% of heads, teachers and parents felt their support came from colleagues, school leaders and family members, but less than 2.5% felt supported by the government. And there was a huge correlation between enjoying remote education and being confident about it and feeling you're able to sustain it, and people that felt supported by colleagues and by family. So being supported led to people feeling, or was correlated with people feeling that they were enjoying remote education and being able and confident to continue it. And so there was also positivity about the opportunities that the pandemic could produce, were also correlated with those feelings of positivity and with those feelings of support. So the take-home message from our research, and certainly from what Caroline and Ty have been saying, is that we need to connect within and across all of the communities and the sub-communities within the education ecosystem to build collaborative support. But we also need to recognize diversity. And my final point is that this is where new technologies like artificial intelligence and data science can really help. Because if we pull the data that we've collected through the pandemic, we can really start to understand what happened. And just to give you a very brief example, just with the data that we had, we were able to look at precisely what had happened, the sort of support that people had used, the sorts of technologies, their feelings about the pandemic as it happened, and build 5 different profiles within the people who responded to our surveys and our interviews and the various other different data collection activities that we conducted. And that allows us to start recognizing that diversity in a scalable way. So I'm going to stop there, and thank you so much for inviting me onto this panel. I'm really looking forward to it. And back to you, Lord Willits.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Very helpful. I would just remind people, do start putting your questions on the Q&A so that we can start identifying issues to bring to the panel when we have our discussion.